Hello, and welcome to the Lunar Lab. Today I'll be showing you how to take your 3D prints to the next level and get a nice professional finish like you would see from a factory, like this. Here we go.
All right, let's get this going. So if we look at this, we've got quite a lot of gaps in here. This is already layered down with a good amount of automotive primer. And so a lot of the gaps actually filled in pretty nice. The way that I printed this is it's very flat, but it's designed to sit up against the wall. We've got some holes back here where it looks like the supports kind of failed it. It might not be an issue, but I might fill it in just to level it out. But we're gonna leave most of the back just pretty much blank. This, we've got these because, try this again. There are line grooves here because I didn't smooth out the model completely before printing it. And so it's still got a little bit of that, that low poly look. Because of a lot of these different angles here, we are not going to effectively be able to reduce them. So instead, rather than making it uneven, we're going to take care of these layer lines, kind of smooth it out and highlight those and kind of give it a little bit of shine detail. So when you're looking at it from different angles, there actually be a bunch of flat surfaces that should reflect really well. It being gold down to here. Up here, we'll be able to make it nice and smooth. It's a nice flat surface, which would be nice. And then we'll take care of a lot of these edging on the outside. So first we're going to take off this whatever surface area we have with 120 grit. Pretty simple. When doing these, I like to give myself a little overhang off the top. And this allows me to bend up into some curves that would be a little more difficult. It's just for consistency's sake. It allows you to really make the most out of it. And so let's begin. I'm actually smoothing out a lot better than I had anticipated. I might actually be able to take off a little bit what I initially thought. We're going to get that shot. Make sure when you're sanding edges like this, that you're supporting it with your grip. You can literally make or break your parts. This is an older part, so I actually don't know what my infill was on this. I've had it for, gosh, 4 or 5 years now, and I have just left it incomplete. So I really don't know what my settings were when doing it. So this could be really dense. It could be closer to the beginning of when I started my 3D printing journey. And it also could be later, so where the infill is not that much, which would mean that it is more brittle. So not knowing what the inside is without cracking it open, I'm just taking the safer approach and just being careful. Because when you break a 3D print, unlike when you break something that is a complete solid, it is very, very difficult to put it back together and have it be stable, because there just isn't any material to bind to it because it's all gaps. It's all surface level. You want to think of a 3D print very much like a video game asset, and that you're only seeing the surface level. You just pretend that there is nothing underneath, nothing behind the curtain, because quite often there isn't. Trying to clear up my abrasive pad here. Since this automotive primer likes to fill up, use quite a bit and clog. Not coming out too bad. I'm going to eliminate this line right here. Gap between these two parts to make it a seamless piece. We've got another big gap right there. We're going to have to try to fill in. I'm going to get the plastic on these as close to each other as possible. If the stability part before you put any infiller in is level, you will be much less likely to graze it when after you put in your filler you go to sand again. It's just important to take your time. Grind down these sides too much. I actually rounded out a lot better than I was expecting to, which is great. Hewing edges on these are always tough. And as you start to peel away the plastic, it likes to fray versus getting nice and sharp. This tool is pretty handy. You can pick it up at pretty much any major craft store. I think I picked mine up at Harbor Freight. Well, it's this kind of sanding stuff. You can also pick it up on Amazon. People are really interested in where I get some of my tools. You can just leave a comment below and I will address it. I think that's about as good as we're going to get that blue spire there. Here, I think I'm just going to clean up the edge. I kind of like the ribbed look on the inside of it, which is more of like an actual key is like. But we're rounding out this edge right here, just ever so slightly to make it a little less sharp. All right, now we got this little round curve here. I think I'm gonna swap this around now, so we're getting back to more bulk. I'm chunking off as much as I can for the first pass. Also, trying to make sure these ridges line up. It's going to be difficult. Well, now that we've rounded out this area, we've got the predicament getting in to this little crevice here. And even though this looks pretty smooth, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I like making stuff ultra smooth. I don't like seeing lines and surfaces that are supposed to be flat. So I'm going to show you how. I'm going to achieve that. So 120 grit is pretty close. And even still, 120 grit does get a pretty good result. Here, That's how our key looks sanded. It's much smoother, but it looks pretty dirty. But we're not done. Now that we're done with 120 grit, we're going to put on 240. Just half the grit. And just run a pass over all our surfaces again. Since this is just cleanup, we don't need to push nearly as hard, nor spend nearly as much time. You can probably hear the difference of what is actually coming off. You can see almost just from the top, looking down, just how much smoother that is. Partially why we did this. So if we look here at the spike, you can see all the layer lines are still there. They're not actually filled in. If we had gone ahead and painted this piece, once we put on that high gloss, that would have shown so obviously through it. And that's not what we want. We want a nice smooth surface. I don't want to take too much off these edges here. Over the top. I actually do like that ribbed look, the top part of this key. But we also have some buildup, it looks like, when we actually put the top coat down on it earlier, years ago. We're just taking the 240 and we're using that to knock a lot of that excess off, but not too much. We want to retain some of that look. Look at all that. Oh, that feels so much better. I'm going to smooth this out a little bit, just to get that excess off, even though we're not going to be finishing the back. Getting this nice and clean will keep it from chunking onto any surface that it's up against. That should be nice. And as you get more experience with this, you'll be able to feel the texture difference of where you have and have not hit well. So this is what I'm doing, is just kind of going over all the surfaces. You can kind of tell what might need it. All right, so let's do a little bit of cleanup. Alright, so I've got a microfiber cloth here. And the reason we're using this is to try to make sure that we're pulling up any dust particles inside these cracks. Because they will ruin both the finish and the structural integrity for our next step. This will also help us see if we've missed some spot. By using a microfiber cloth, we're not going to leave any residue behind. It allows us to use a very little moisture, which will only help this thing dry faster, almost instantaneously. It's important to not rush this step. Work sequentially as you're going through the part. This will help you keep from overlooking bypassing any area. So, as you can see, these deeper parts where the dark gray is still quite visible is where we had the deepest amount of imperfections in our 3D print. These would have been highlighted and noticeable if we had just gone ahead and painted from that primer step. So while it may look done, we're striving for better perfection. As you can see, the parts where it was the heaviest, where we were having issues, it pulled it off. So we won't need to fix too much of the back, except for this kind of, I don't know if you can see, it's curved here. If we set this down, how much of that is really shown up? So it is a bit warped, which I'm not too happy about. Like that, does it add or remove? It adds to it. So maybe we'll just fill it in just a wee bit. Now, this foam putty. I have tried just about everything. And it's water soluble. This is great. It fills in so much better than Bondo. I can't express enough how much better this is to Bondo. Bondo is great for strength, but when you're dealing with parts that are going to be decorative, you really don't need strength. You just need a good finish. And oftentimes, if you're putting so much Bondo on that you're changing the shape, then you need a better model than what you've produced. So this is to fill in layer cracks. It just works so well. You barely need any. It's really, really soft and easy to work with. You barely need any at all. You could just push it in. Actually got too much on my fingers, surprisingly. And just kind of work it in. There's some spots here. I'm going to make sure that we're layering quite a bit on. It's going to make the cleanup not as fun. Just enough to cover it. You can see just how easily this wipes away as I'm putting it on. Just kind of effortlessly fills in these gaps. It really does not take much. From a little bit on this other side of the back. Let's sit down. Try to do this without bleeding into the middle as much as we can. Now I'm grabbing about that much, just barely any. Which goes a really long way. With no joke, this one container I've had for about 2 years now. You can see just how little I've actually used of it. Feel it drying. Now, take this. Something a little more fun. Back to knife. Excellent. All right. And with that, you can see, even now, it's almost dry. So we're gonna give that about an hour. Let that do its thing. And then we'll come back and finish it. Okay, so we've now returned, and it is nice and dry as a bone. Could have been done in a couple hours, but I had a party to go to. So now that it is, we still want to use 240 grit, but we want to make sure that we're using a nice clean sheet on this step because we don't want any particles left. It's 800. It's too far in. We don't want any particles inside that could potentially damage or gouge our finished product. We could do it in 400. It's a little bit less, it'll take us a little bit longer, but in the end we want a finer result anyway, so we're going to do 400 grit. I guess I gotta pick up some 240. So we're going to start. To make sure everything is working correctly, we're actually going to go with the flatter area first. As you'll notice, it's almost like it's not really even taken off that much. And that's because it actually did fill in like we were hoping. So the great thing about this is, as you can see, there really is not a lot of cleanup. At least not as much as when you use other additives like Bondo, because you're able to get so much of it off during the applying process, because you really don't need that much. But it makes this last step, which is usually a big pain if you're using a heavy additive like Bondo, so much nicer and faster. Look at that, I'm just about done with this top part already. It is insanely smooth. When you're dealing with a flat surface like this, it can be difficult to maintain being level. So it's important to just kind of take your time, feel the part out, and just try to make sure that you're not rocking over these edges. Sometimes it can take longer, sometimes you can see some in the middle that you're like, oh, I should probably be trying to take this off. But just trust that you've smoothed things out and that everything will fall into place where you want it. You always want to check every now and then that you don't have any big particles stuck in this, because if they are, every time you rub over this, it's basically going to gouge and undo all of your hard work. Now I am going to clean up the back a bit at some point, but I am going to wait until we finish this side. Right now I'm just kind of cleaning up any of that overage that spilt over into the sides here. And some are more difficult than others. to deal with. Again, these flat edges coming to a point here can be difficult to deal with because PLA likes to fray rather than grind. All right, you can see just how insanely smooth that is, and this is just at 400. Now if you look, you can actually see what looks like scratches, and those are from when we did it at a higher grit. But because we did the big takeoff before we put on the foam putty, this bad boy, it all got filled in, so we didn't have to grind down farther to get it flat when we went to the higher grit. It'll save you so much time and keep your materials closer to the original shape that you printed it if you do it in this way. Very little debris from the biggest surface area here. Now we got a lot bigger chunks here. We're gonna have to watch as we do these segments here to make sure that we're not gouging and digging too deep, otherwise we're gonna have cavities. But we'll see how it turns out. All right, so we've made our first critical junction here that we need an X-Acto knife for. These bigger chunks right here, you need to carefully take the biggest parts off before you use a finer piece. Of sandpaper. Normally, if you were using Bondo, you wouldn't be able to achieve this kind of precision because it is so stiff that the whole thing would end up chunking off, thus leaving you with a big gaping hole. But this is both stable and fragile enough to get just what you want off and leave the foam behind in the layer lines. Now I personally use a more dull X-Acto knife when I'm doing this, just because I don't want to accidentally slip and severely gouge. I just need just enough, basically as a pinpoint, to get what I want out. If you're needing to push hard enough to actually cut into anything, that means you're not cutting the foam, you're cutting the plastic. It should just easily, even more easier than butter, come right off. Normally on a bigger piece like this, you don't have such intricate details, but I am a glutton for punishment, apparently. So you don't have to be. as much as I want to avoid cleaning up the back as much as possible, we also don't want anything sticking out to be visible on the other side. As you can see, it's just easily coming right off. Take the bigger chunks off the back here. That'll fill up the sandpaper. Okay, done most of the trimming that we need to. Now we're just going to go back over where we just cut, just to get any sort of stragglers that might be hanging around. Take this. Make sure we're really getting into those corners. I'm going to take our rag again. And again, we only want to just even just partially damp, just enough to grab material but not soak our print. Because the foam is so water soluble, we do not want to accidentally pull any of it out. Just what's on the surface. So ever so lightly, I'm just going to cover the whole surface. We want a nice finished product that is smooth. The only major downside with using this foam putty is that it pretty much eliminates being able to wet sand, because you just end up taking everything back off. So you can wet sand the beginning part, but once the foam putty does go on, unfortunately you are just at dry standing for the rest of the project, whatever it is that you're working on. So just keep that in mind. Do not wet sand once you've put on foam putty. Ta-da! Actually filled it in quite a bit. I'm really impressed. Okay. Probably should have done the back side first. My quick cleanup, but no harm, no foul. So we can just do this real quick. Now that we've taken all of the excess foam putty off, we are going to hit it with our last grit sandpaper for one final pass. And what it will do is anything extra that could be sitting up will get caught, giving us an even smoother finish. There you are. 800. You can see just how smooth it is becoming. Look at all this that was filled in from that foam putty. All of that would have been shown if we had just gone with paint right after the primer. These divots up here, where it's especially heavy, are inside the crevice here, probably where we had some of the print that came upwards, or maybe downwards when it was ironing it for the last stage. A lot of different ways that these things can go wrong when you're 3D printing. The stitching lines from just its path all filled in because of the extra effort that we put in. So now, after all our efforts, let's give it one nice finishing touch. I'm starting with the smoothest parts, just because it will show any sort of imperfections the most. So we want to give it the most chance with a nice fresh piece of sandpaper to be artifact free. And you can hear the difference. The sandpaper is just kind of gliding over it. But even still, it's still getting dirty, which tells you that you are still in fact taking off more layers. Maybe tiny. You may not visually see the change, but it is happening. And you can feel the difference, moreover. I do actually see a bit of this debris that still came off. All right. Look at that. Just gonna see just how smooth that is. When we put on that first layer of paint, it is going to look absolutely fantastic. So after going over the design of this key, we've got some obvious problems with painting it. Is we have these inner cavities here, as well as a lot of the borders that we need to take care of. And the problem with doing that is we've got these rounded parts here and these open gaps. So I think the solution that I'm going to do to make sure that we don't hit any of this side with any paint is actually cover each area with painter's tape and hit it from the other side. This will allow us to both hit the back side with full color, so it's not just primer back there, and allow us to paint the inner cavities without too much fuss, as long as we don't overdo it. So I think because of that, we're going to hit it with a matte black, so that when we do these bold colors on this side, that they really do just pop. And we don't want any bleed over. We want to make sure that we're pressing down on the whole shape pretty thoroughly to make sure that we're getting all of the surface area to keep any sort of loose stuff from coming through. If it does, it won't be that big of an issue. We can just resand on this side once the inside is actually done. Being so flat shouldn't be too much of a problem. But by doing it this way, we'll at least save ourselves a headache by just taking the extra step. Now the bigger problem is making sure that we don't hit the bottom part here. That will be much more difficult to clean up. And being that it's rounded, it would be a lot more difficult to actually paint. So, what is the play here? Well, all of this is going to get gold on it, so we don't have to worry about covering the insides here. But on the back, It's quite a different story. What is going to be the play here? I think the bottom part here is just going to have to go without. If anything, it'll just get extra of the gold that we end up putting on the bottom. So we are going to just block off the entire bottom part of the key here. That is probably going to be the most safe way to do this. I need a flat edge, don't I? Well, actually, I got an idea. I'm gonna hang this here. I want just a little piece. Rather than try to experiment and risk it not being even, I'm just gonna use the natural evenness. Right there, give us a nice hard line. And then we can just layer this over the top right here. And we want to make sure that we're not hitting the front side here, because as we're doing a lot of these angles, could very well bleed in. Just lay it like this. Let's bypass. Thank you. And this should help any sort of splatter that may come about. Just kind of save us some headache here. Still, you want to be careful when you're putting painter's tape on. It can pull stuff out of the layer lines. So you do not want to press too hard on areas where it is the thickest. So I have not really faced much of an issue when it comes to this. That really has to be strong. Definitely recommend painter's tape over masking tape or any sort of packing tape. Painter's tape is generally the way you want to go. Okay, bottom part of the key is covered. And a nice flat surface here. Do we want the outside to also be black? That is the question. I need to pull back on this a little bit. Make sure it's not coming up on any areas. I think we're good. It's got its own little swaddled baby blanket. And it's now ready for paint. So this is what it looks like with just one coat on the back. You can see if you look super close, there's just little tiny dots, maybe a couple air bubbles. This is okay. This is just the back side. What we care about is the edges and how well it's coming down. Now, there are a couple spots that I'm seeing in here that didn't fully get coverage, but if I stayed at it for any much longer, it would pull up so much that it would come underneath inside the tape, and we don't want that. So if we just wait a good 15 minutes for this layer to dry, it's already starting to do so. I'm already starting to see gaps. It'll be okay to add another coat, as long as you don't wait too long. I would say over an hour. It's pretty okay to then add your next coat, and it'll bind just fine. So we'll leave that be, and we'll come back to it. Hit that extra spot. I'm seeing it at the top part, right in here. Maybe that spot inside there. Looks like we got the center of the eye okay. Looks like it's mostly just these gaps at the edge of the eye. Looks like there's some on the inner part of the eye as well. So we'll be able to hit those with a little more focused hits. And since most of the areas are already covered, we'll be good to go. Anything else we'll probably just touch up with a brush if we absolutely need to fill the entire corner.
but otherwise we should be okay. As you can see, with a second coat on, even being the backside as rough as it was compared to the front, is still pretty gosh darn smooth. So just wait until we do the other side with the gold. Now gold is going to show a lot more imperfections than matte black will, and it's a bit shiny right now because it's still wet with the second coat, but it's still looking pretty dang good for what we want. So here we go. All right, we've got it all now prepped up for still on the stage here. Middle of the eye. But you can see some of the black on the side. And yeah, we're just gonna put the gold on here and let it set. And this is with just a single layer of that gold. And by goodness, it looks pretty dang good, if I do say so myself. Layered on nice and thick, which I'm really surprised. Even on the sides here, it covered up that black pretty well, which is odd. I was not expecting it to get that much coverage there, but it did. Got a nice looking Zelda boss key here. And so we'll give it another 15 minutes, and then we'll throw another layer of gold on just to get good coverage. And then we'll let it dry so that way we can do the center of the eye. This is with 2 coats. And you can see just how bloody smooth this turned it out being. And that shine really shows it off. Gold is one of those colors that really shows off imperfections too. So to get this kind of smoothness out of such an old print is pretty satisfying for me. I doubt there would be much better we could do without modifying the actual model to get even better smoothness out of it. I'm especially impressed with how the main body of the key here actually turned out pretty dang smooth, despite showing very clear low poly lines in addition to the layer lines. So overall, very impressed with how it came out, and now we just wait until to do the final step. We are nearly there. It was pretty dang good so far. And funny enough, it actually gave me a nice frosted look for this back because I had it suspended. But the gold dries pretty quick. You can see just how well it shows off any slight imperfection, which honestly, for a gold look, actually looks pretty cool. It actually looks more like authentic gold, which I'm pretty pleased with. But yeah, so now we got to do the purple and the pupil, or which will be red. I'm really surprised, actually, that the black that I had on the side, thick matte black, was covered up by the gold pretty effortlessly, even on just the first coat. So, just about finished with this beauty. So I've opted to do the red of the iris first with the rattle can here. As doing the purple, I do think having the sides around the iris is going to be better for the purple, which will be easy to cover any sort of extras on. So that is the route I'm going to go. So got it all nice and sealed up so that way we don't get any splatter anywhere. Actually, I still got to cover that. And then we'll be good. Here we go. And this is after just one coat. Very thick stuff. All right, we are on now the final step, getting this purple in here. So let's do it. I am really liking how that purple came down. Looks pretty dang good. Can't wait to see it when it's dry. And with that, our boss key is complete. As you can see, all those pesky rivets have been dealt with. I got some nice gold looking texture here, but often pretty smooth. Really smooth texture here. And I actually did something a little different than I normally do. I actually sprayed a bit of our rattle can here into a dish and hand painted on after I'd put down a couple layers. And what this has done is kind of given the literal eye of this key some glossy eye texture like you would find on a person. So it almost kind of gives this a more organic look, because as you're tilting it, gosh, it looks watery right here while still being smooth. Really, really cool effect. Something I'll probably end up doing more as I experiment more. Yeah, this is a job well done if I do say so myself. And with that, we've got our boss key. It was a bit difficult dealing with the paint this week due to the monsoon of rain the Seattle area is getting. If you're interested, you can look it up on any of the news, because it's now the wettest place on Earth other than the tropics, which is pretty weird. But we still got it done. The Wind Waker is probably one of my favorite Zelda games, and I really enjoyed bringing this kind of collectible to life. But here is the key to this whole thing. This right here is now going to be available on my Etsy shop. So if you want a little piece of Star Haven, I guess, panache, beauty, however you want to call it, you can pick it up on my Etsy store, which will be linked down below. And why don't you tell me in the comments, what should I make next? It might just end up on the shop, and you can pick up something cool if you get noticed first. So, love to hear more down below. Until then, see you in the next one at Lunar Lab.